All right. Thank you. Good morning. All right. My name's Marc Seguin. I am the CMO for Popchips. And for those of you who haven't heard of us, by the end of the presentation, you'll know pretty much everything there is to know about Popchips. So I'll cover that off one snacker at a time here today. When they asked me to come and speak, I thought, okay, do I have anything that's going to be interesting to share with a bunch of sort of savvy digital media marketing folks? I thought, well, we're really proud of our story at Popchips. We tell it what we think is an interesting brand story. And what we like to do is take that brand story and deliver it one snacker at a time, figure out how to communicate with our snackers on a really one-to-one basis. And doing that through really an omnichannel approach, so touch points really across the marketplace, both offline and online, and ultimately developing it into a media plan that leverages programmatic. So I thought, okay, that sounds pretty good. We have an interesting story that funnels all the way into programmatic media, and maybe that would be interesting to you folks. If not, get some more coffee. It's up to you. But I thought I better double check. So I went and spoke to my entirely millennial marketing team and said, hey, should I go talk at this digital marketing programmatic media conference? And they're probably still laughing back at the office, thinking that I was not the person to speak at this, but I was undeterred. I was, my primary goal for today is to prove to them I'm not as old as they think I am. Then I heard Ari's speech this morning, and I was like, oh no, I'm in the wrong conference. I didn't know any of the acronyms he was using. The whole data side is like, wow, this is going to be interesting. So bear with me. Won't be probably the least technical presentation you are going to see during this conference. All right. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Popchips. What's our approach? How do we seduce the right snackers? How do we pick the right people, and how do we really get them to understand the brand? How do we, as a small brand, punch above our weight? We are very small in a big pond of snacking, and it's really easy to get lost when you're sort of fighting it out with giants day in and day out. And ultimately, I want to then show you an example of how we kind of get outside of the box and take programmatic to a new level. So, what's our approach? Any challenger brand, they need to know these things. What are you up against? Big snacking. Spoiler alert, that's Frito-Lay. Our snackers. You got to understand who you're talking to, what you're going after. For us, it's this healthy snacker that loves chips. They're really engaged with the category. They have an emotional connection to the snacks that they eat every day. And then ultimately who you are as a brand. What drives you, what gets you up in the morning, because that has to bring to life the brand story that's ultimately going to manifest itself in whether it's programmatic media or outdoor or any other type of consumer touch point. So understanding these three things is where it all starts for us. For us, who we are. What's our code? For us, we think that snackers in general, and by the way, snacking is growing at an exponential rate. Millennials today are moving away from traditional meals and moving to 7, 8, 9 snacks a day instead. And it's really one of the biggest changes in the way food consumption is happening in the last 50 years. But so they're snacking all the time. But snackers have been sold a bill of goods that snacking, in order to taste good, has to be bad for you. And what we believe is that there can be bold snacking that tastes good for you from a company that has soul, that cares about the people that are eating their products, and brings a lot of energy to the category and challenges the status quo. And really, that's our code. It's all about doing something different, turning anything that we want into a snack as long as it tastes great and it's better for you. Here's the place that we play. We're in between sort of the better for you nutrition that just doesn't taste good, that doesn't really have a lot of soul because it's bark or seaweed or something like that. Just not that awesome, and and then the stuff that's bad for you but that tastes really good. And anybody who's had the experience of going to the grocery store to buy snacks, and if you got some self-control that day, you speed past the bad stuff and try not to make eye contact with Doritos because they're really good. And you try and get to the part of the salty snack aisle that you know is better for you, but is likely going to vastly disappoint you on taste. And so we felt like we found a spot in between those two things where something could exist, that you didn't have to be disappointed with taste and really have something that you could feel good about and not be guilty about. So that's really where our brand sits. That's the essence of who we are and where we think we play, what we're up against from a competitive standpoint. Here's a little story about us.
There's a little voice inside all of us. It helps guide us, protect us, tells us what to do, what not to do, what to eat, what not to eat. At Popchips, we feel it's our job, our mission, to harness that inner voice, to capture it, take it out back, and kick the living out of it. Unless it's giving you next week's lottery numbers, we think it's time to silence that little voice in your head once and for all. Time to live how you want to live. Do what you want to do. And yes, eat what you want to eat. Is it important to snack healthy? Absolutely. But isn't it just as important to have a healthy attitude toward snacking? Which is why we created a different kind of chip. One that's deeply satisfying, but never deep fried. Because at Popchips, we believe life was meant to be enjoyed to the fullest. And every bag to its emptiest. We believe that every day is what you make it. So why not make it pop? We think it's time to take a stand for snacking, to put all our chips on the table and go all in. To grab life by the bags and rock out with your pop out. So bid a fair adieu to fried, say bon voyage to baked, and say hello to a better chip. A chip that doesn't force you to choose between good and good for you. One that doesn't need to be fried to be fabulous. One that's all love, no handles. So don't hold back. Tear into a bag, or two, or three. And go ahead and stuff that beautiful face of yours. Because Popchips aren't just chips. They're freedom in a bag. Popchips. Freedom to snack.
So that's just our internal motivational video. Every brand's got to have one. Watch it every couple days to try and stay fired up about what we're doing. It works pretty good most of the time. All right, so that's sort of what the brand is about and sort of how we see ourselves, what gets us up in the morning. But we needed to understand who we were talking to. So Seducing the Right Snackers really is all about us as a brand going out, doing a really deep consumer segmentation so we can understand all the motivational factors and really have a statistical model that helps us zero in on who drives the category, who drives our purchases, who is most likely to convert to Popchips, what do they want to hear from us, how do they want us to talk to them. So we've done a lot of consumer work in the last couple years that really has changed how we operate as a company from a marketing standpoint. And really it starts with the healthy snacker. And really this is, the first thing is, what do they want to hear from us? Because that's, when you're talking about content, creating content that comes in the form of a message that will resonate with us, our snacker in our case, is super important. And one of the interesting things that we found is that when you talk to snackers about a better for you snack, and the minute I tell you that it's made with great ingredients, or that we never fry it, or that it's less than 100 calories, or maybe it has, like Nutter Puffs has 5 grams of protein, immediately you go to a headspace and you're like, okay, now I'm looking at it really on a better for you analytical argument. And when you make an analytical argument with consumers, you can't win them from a brand in an emotional space because they shift to a headspace, and then anybody can out better for you me, for lack of a better term. They can add more protein, they can add more fiber, might not taste as good, but where we have to win as a better for you brand is where Frito-Lay, quite frankly, has been winning for a lot of years, and that's in the emotional space. And so we have to talk to them about our brand in an emotional way, in a heart space, and our content has to be created that way. And when we do that, we find that the reaction to the advertising that we run, the reaction to the events that we put on, the reaction to the PR that we look for, drives both the sort of traction with our busy balancers and the purchase ultimately in the offline consumption in a material way. And ultimately, all this is about taking our brand and running it through this funnel to get to a attribution, which is really the way that us old marketers say selling stuff in store, and really ringing the bell at the cash register, because most of our business is still done offline through traditional grocery stores. So we have to talk to them in a way that gets them to the store, that we can track, that gets them to buy our products. And doing this, we've found that if we do it in the right way with the right type of message, it really works. Who are they? Really important to understand. In a $20 billion category, 28% of category shoppers make up 40% of the volume. Very, high income, high educated, strong millennial coverage with a fairly broad demographic mix, across the country. Us as a brand, we're pretty regional to the coasts. That's where we started, but we're starting to fill in the center of the country. But this is who the healthy snacker is. We know how they want it, what they want to hear. We know who we are, and now we know kind of who they are. So that's sort of starting to power all of our efforts to create an omni-channel approach. And so how do we punch above our weight? As a small company, up against companies 100 times our size, how do we break through the clutter? Understanding who they are, then creating great content, and having this sort of targeted 360-degree approach where we're everywhere, both online and offline, really is working for us. Starts with great campaigns that connect to that emotional component. Everything from campaigns that we're doing in the UK, which is another one of our markets, to our Peanut Better campaign, launching a new brand here. I'll show you a case study on that in a minute. We launched a more kid-focused item with a Star Wars Galaxy Puffs, the first sort of shaped item in the Better For You category. And then our traditional campaigns, the last one we did this summer is called Skinny Chipping, and I'll run through that here in a second. It all comes down to content that resonates. And as you can see here, we have everything across different touch points. So we have digital video, we have out of home, we have banner, we're doing video, influencers and social, kind of across the board. I think I have a little video that sort of summarizes our summer campaign, which is Skinny Chipping. This is a good example of what we think is the first step of taking those campaigns and bringing them to life in a way that's organic to our snacker. And that's social and digital. Where we want to win is in the social media front. We want to have the best share of voice. We know that our major competitors are out there spending massive dollars against social, massive dollars against digital, as well as traditional media. But we still think if we have the right content and we're smart about it, we can win from a share of voice standpoint on a social media front, really against the BFY set for sure, which is the Better For You set, and against the snack category as well. So we're winning from a share of voice standpoint by creating good content, leveraging influencers, and really then using digital media in a smart way. And I'll show you a few snippets of that right now.
Now it's time to play a little game of Leah Michelle's Memorial Day to Remember. How do you get this amazing physique while eating Popchips?
Well, that's what you do. If you eat well and you work hard, then, you'll see the results.
All right. So that was our summer campaign, and hopefully what you're seeing is us trying to bring that brand energy, that brand personality to life to that consumer that we already identified through a lot of different touch points, and really starting to create the omni-channel approach. One of the big pieces of that approach for us is influencers. We find that if we're talking to consumers on the social media front, they're not really coming to our social media pages, are the places where we would be able to control the message. They're going to the people that they know and trust. So we use influencers in a material way, and we work directly with influencers to find people that fit the brand, embrace the message, that really speak very specifically to our healthy snackers. And as a result, the engagement that we get on our social media posts with our influencers is 3-4 times higher than pretty much anybody in the category. And that's something that we feel extremely good about because, again, it comes back to having the right message, speaking to these folks in the right way through the right mediums. And so influencers is a spectacularly strong way for a small brand to, again, punch above its weight. And really these influencers today, as a brand that was built in sort of pop culture in the very early days, we've had Bruno Mars, Katy Perry, Ashton Kutcher, all those folks work on the brand. And it's in the first 3 or 4 years to help sort of build the buzz around the brand. We're only 10 years old, but as we've moved into year number 10, we're finding that the place where we can really have a lot of luck is these influencers who are really now becoming, they have 3, 4, 500,000 followers instead of 10, 20 million. And what they bring to the party is a level of authenticity about the brand that you don't get when you're paying somebody really big dollars to do a singular post. And they're really becoming a heavyweight bunch, their own agencies and agents and everything else. But we're still working with most of these folks directly, which is great. Ultimately, again, it comes back to in-store. How do we drive our sales in-store? So if we're going to create that message, our brand message, find the right people, reach them online with influencers, people they trust, digital media that they start to see the video like you saw from the skinny chipping campaign. How do we get all of those touch points rolling before they get to the store? Ultimately, we need to bring it to life in-store so that we can sell product and drive our revenue results with our key retailers. So getting big displays and getting participation when all of those things are happening online is critically important. If they're not connected, if there's not that 360-degree approach, honestly, no matter how good any one piece of it is, whether it's your digital marketing or your PR or your influencers, none of those really work very well if you can't close the sale at the register when you're trying to finally move someone into the purchase phase. So this is our one snacker approach campaign approach. So if you look at what we sort of went through, digital campaigns, you saw the skinny chipping video, some of the banners, the PR, the type of stuff we're doing, in-store displays. We even leverage local radio. We have a field marketing team in the summer that goes out to target markets, and really we have a van, somebody's out there who's setting up shop. At the same time that that's all happening, we're running digital and programmatic in a market. So we did a big push into Nashville last year because we thought it was an influencer market that drives the Southeast, and we're trying to fill in the center of the country as a brand. So we were in Nashville with radio, with field, with our key retail customers, but also with digital media, running ads, letting people know where we were going to be, and in real time adjusting that marketing mix online so that we had contextual Nashville advertising that leveraged what was happening in real time in the market. And when we did that, talking to the right people, we saw in that particular market, it was actually more than 70% velocity increase. But when we talk velocity, that's our sort of throughput at the retail store. So if we were selling 20 units a store a week, we went to 40 units a store a week in Nashville as a result of this campaign. So people talk about not being able to all the things that we do ultimately to a sale. I would argue that if you do it in the right market, in the right sort of test environment, it's actually totally measurable. Because if you don't see real sales increases, if a brand like us, as a result of anything we do, including digital media, however whatever the trick is that makes it as efficient as possible, it doesn't make any sense. This is what my boss evaluates me on ultimately, is my ability to drive revenue to the bottom line. So, we're winning with consumers in terms of how they feel about the brand. We ask when we go out and do attitude and usage in these markets where we run this contextual stuff with programmatic, we're seeing that our favorite brand status, which is something that we always would like to say, is way off the charts. People are rating us as their favorite brand, so it feels really good. And we're one of the fastest growing brands in the Better For You category, so 12, 24 weeks, we're accelerating from a revenue standpoint far past our competitive frame, far past more traditional folks as well. But it feels really good to have found, as a small brand, kind of a mix of tools that we can bring together that are not super expensive, that are affordable for a brand our size, but that are also measurably effective and can drive our revenue. So now we're starting to scale that for more markets to drive the business even farther, which is really exciting. I've been on big brands where we've done Super Bowl, you name it, full-on $30, $40, $50 million TV campaigns, and those things are great. They're loud, and you immediately feel the effect in store. But there's so few brands that can spend that kind of money. And honestly, as the consumers get more narrowly focused on just the things that they want and being able to speak to them where they are, the ability to get that narrow focus at costs that make sense for small to medium-sized brands is amazing, and then to have that effect. So final piece here is I want to give you this Nutter Puffs product we're just launching right now. It's basically an entirely new product for us, and we're really excited about it. It's a peanut butter, basically covered puff, not super breakthrough, 3 ingredients, but nobody's doing it in the category really in a good way, and so we think it's going to really drive growth for us. We think it's going to drive growth for the category. And we know that there's a real nostalgic connection to peanut butter. And so how do we tap into that as a brand? We wanted to go even further in our programmatic approach, same type of stuff you saw in our 360, but how do we improve it even more so that our message is really reaching the right people and explaining to them, hey, if you love peanut butter, now there's a snack for you that's really easy to eat, it's on the go, something you haven't had. You don't have to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. If you want to have something on the go, you can have a peanut butter snack, which is great. So we're digging into this big billion-dollar peanut butter snacking category. The idea of delivering the nostalgic reaction to Nutter Puffs and really reinventing the peanut butter experience. How do we do that? So we're testing with a media partner, my digital consigliere who's over here, Tom, helped me kind of come up with a plan to test this in Denver. And we took the same type of 360 approach. So we said we're going to go in, we're going to do activations, we're going to do samples, we're going to be in store, maybe a little bit of outdoor, all of those touch points. But how do we take our digital media even up a notch so that we're really hitting people, hitting them again, because it's a brand new item and people might not totally understand it, and converting them to an in-store purchase. So we went out and did, came up with basically, third-party, profiling using sort of the digital components, which I won't even pretend to understand. But I thought the slide looked good. Layered approach that Tom assures me is really effective. So, and as it turns out, it was. So it's good. I trust him. He has, ended up being right, which is always a nice change. But again, so we really identify this profile for healthy snacker and then layered it over that healthy snacker that we had offline and all the things that we had learned about what drives their love for our brand, and then layered in what drives people's interest in peanut butter, and went on a small geographic basis where we were testing so we could get all these moving parts and see what really worked. We then looked at how do we get from that digital space, how do we understand how we're going to have the right person at the right time with the right message, layer all that over, and deliver a really cool creative and content that fits the brand. So bringing all those things together is what we tried to do, and even in a more interesting way for this most recent test that we ran at the end of last year, hitting this busy balancer. And so we launched our kind of this Spreading the Love, Peanut Better campaign, and it was in Denver this year where we did our test market. And what was really exciting, a lot of the same stuff that you saw in our other stuff, but when we did our banner and our digital video, we were leveraging more of a premium marketplace. So really first, sort of ads, the best stuff, and delivering that, and then sort of following that consumer with our content that we feel really good about. And as a result, it took what we saw as great velocity improvement in our prior tests to an even higher level. So I'll show you what that looks like. So that's like some of the digital video that we were using. Ultimately, these are some of the digital results. From Denver, we saw really great video performance relative to what we were expecting, paid social, our displays really, the click-through rates, all of the sort of the key metrics that we set up for ourselves, we far exceeded. And ultimately, we did a Nielsen brand study, looking at purchase intent, control versus those people who were exposed to the ad. So 160% lift, which obviously is an amazing result in terms of driving movement by having this content that we know is talking to the right people about the right things in the right place. And that's sort of the magic of bringing all of this stuff together, which is pretty fun. I mean, and I've been doing marketing for a really long time. And the ability to now do this in a mechanical way to reach people and give them the message that you want to give them in a very specific spot to drive a very specific result in the many, many years that I've been doing this is actually pretty new. You haven't really been able to do this before, so it's quite fun to see. And ultimately, as we look at the offline results, our target sales rate was sort of the category standard in the puff space, which was Pirate's Booty. We're selling at about 160% of their velocity rate, so way off the charts, better than anything we expected on a velocity basis in terms of sales in store while we were running that campaign, while we had the 360 approach. And basically when we talked about sentiment, how people felt about the brand, it was basically 100% positive. And that doesn't happen unless you're really reaching them with a meaningful message, which is fantastic. So that's kind of our story. Hopefully, I made it all come together. We really do feel like we have a great brand story, and ultimately, digital and programmatic is an important tool in the toolkit for us to really drive that one snacker at a time approach. And every time we do it, it gets better. And for the first time, I think broadly in the C-suite, where I tend to sit and have to explain what I'm doing, I can drive real numbers to the bottom line and connect it to real activities in a way that gets me more and more budgets, which is always great as a marketer. So,
Mark, thank you very much.
You bet.
That's great. We have time for questions. If anybody has questions of Mark, raise your hand. We'll get the mic to you. Yep.
Oh. God, you're fast. No, you got it. You got it. You got it.
We got time.
Hey, Mark. Luke with OMD. I promise I won't tell Frito-Lay about anything you just said.
I know, I'm very close to where they are, too, so I need to get out of Texas before.
Great job. Digital stuff was really good. My question is actually about the traditional stuff. So a lot of video content. How do you make this stuff work in a traditional way, or do you take some of this traditional video and make it work here?
Well, traditional video, I mean, we're not doing a lot of, outside of, call it like the Hulu type of advertising, that kind of stuff. We don't do traditional TV at this point. I mean, for a brand our size, can be a bit cost prohibitive. Where we're doing more traditional media might be outdoor advertising in a specific focus market. We might do some radio, because we think that that's sort of close to the point of purchase. And then obviously we're going digital mobile. So like we're trying to get a lot of the touch points that get people when they're moving around, possibly heading to the store, and then we're in market with a field team sampling and then have displays in store. So, we're not doing a ton of traditional TV right now, but I think it all comes down to creating an ecosystem where we can seem much bigger than we are. Because if I go into a single market like Nashville, I can spend a reasonable amount of money, hit you with a lot of messages online, a lot of messages on your phone, maybe a little bit from the radio station that you know and love. Then you bump into my product in store, and you've maybe tried a bag of my product at the country fair or wherever I might be sampling. So if I can bring all that together in a focused period of time, it makes it feel like I'm Frito-Lay for a short period of time, and I can really break through the clutter. So it's kind of mixing those things together and making sure they work. One-offs in any of those, unless you have a lot of money to spend, never seem to really move the needle from a revenue standpoint for us.
Good. Next one.
Hi, Megan Moore from Sony. I work in a brand marketing capacity, and a lot of people like to say, brand for Sony is like boiling in the ocean because we're massive. But I think one of the things that resonated with me was the emotional connection, and that's something that we really focus on because we do have such a wide variety of products, and we're really trying to, market the portfolio of, not so much just this pair of headphones or just this PlayStation, but what Sony brings to you as a brand of extraordinary experiences. And so the emotional side of this, I guess what's that balance for you? Because obviously, yes, you tapping into emotions and having those sentiment scores and things of that nature is important, but how do you kind of go beyond that? That's actually, it's kind of twofold question. One, that's, how do you guys really figure out how to do the emotional part right, that you're not losing them so much in emotion that they're so excited, but they're, maybe forgetting to go purchase. And then also what are some interesting things that you're seeing in the content space that is helping you to kind of drive those emotional experiences out? I know you talked about influencers and everything there, but is there anything else that's kind of interesting or you've seen that is, kind of on the forefront of that area?
So I guess, yeah, two parts there. I think that on the emotion front for us, we have, when somebody goes in store, we have the opportunity to really deliver the functional message, which is, this is a great tasting product, and there's a bunch of stuff on the bag that says it's good for me, and it's in the part of the aisle that's good for me. So I can lean on that on the functional side. So what I'm really trying to do in all of my other dollars is make the emotional connection. So I don't take my foot off the gas too much on the emotional side, because I feel like once people get in store and there's lots of choices, that they have to choose from when they're put in their basket, the only place where I can really win is if they have an emotional tug on that. Oh, that's the product that I really want to have because it's going to make my family happy, or that's the one I feel good about having after I go to the gym, or those kind of things where I can win there. Then I'm going to win that battle in store. So we don't really give up on the emotional front at all. I feel like ultimately that translates once you get in store. In terms of, influencers are obviously, and micro-influencers are the place where everybody's playing right now, trying to win that game, because you can talk to people through people that they trust and that they know, and that content's really important. We're doing sort of digital stuff that also shows up in a contextual way that fits the brand. So if it's Nashville and the country music festival's going on, and we created an ad that says, Popchips is all about country, and that contextual ad can show up for the right people in the right spot, That's super helpful for us too, because we feel we get a lot more traction if it's just placed in the right way. But that also means you got to pay attention to every single thing so that the context comes through. But you know, I think really the influencer and micro-influencer piece is still, although it's growing very fast, still there's a lot of room there.
We have time for one more.
With online grocery shopping Ashley Evenson with Cicerone. With online grocery shopping becoming more popular, do you see your digital strategy changing that aspect since there's not really a point of sale, and how do you expose the consumer to your products when they're not going through the aisle when, you know, Instacart's becoming more popular?
That's a great question, and I think fortunately that will ultimately make it easier, because for a company like us where we do spend most of our money, quite frankly, online, marketing digitally, that when we can finally convert people in a D2C way, that's going to make our conversion model a lot easier to measure, because then I don't have that step where they have to leave online to then go offline to buy my products. So there's definitely a future in that, and it's growing. It's still small on a percentage basis for food, relatively speaking. We have a very strong partnership with Amazon, because I think they sort of are leading the way in that front, obviously. And we, quite frankly, sell a lot of product on Amazon. So we're, you know, where we're test and learn, whether it's, you know, Instacart, Box.com, Amazon,